So I'm here with Sean Jackson today, and he volunteered to do this interview, and we're going to learn a little bit more about him and TriTats. Sean, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here.
So tell me, how did you come about with the idea for temporary race tattoos?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It kind of goes back to 2007. My brother, who's 9 years younger than me, had gone to the Naval Academy, and he had joined the triathlon team at the U.S. Naval Academy. And I always gave him a hard time for being a triathlete and for having pointy handlebars and riding around in the aero position. All those years I'd been racing my bike, and I'd been a long time cycling addict. You know, whether it was ultra marathon cycling or your average USCF crit race and things, that had been my love and passion. And so anyway, one day, like I said, he was a Navy SEAL. He puts me in a headlock and says, "Hey, bro, you're going to do an Olympic distance triathlon with me." And I'm like, "No, no, I don't want to swim and I don't like to run." Well, he won that battle. And so I trained and I did halfway decent, and I enjoyed my first triathlon in 2007 at the Memphis in May event. And it was a great experience. I loved it. And so then I signed up for a few more triathlons, kind of got the tri bug going. And then I showed up at some event it might have been up in Des Moines, Iowa, one of the large high V triathlons back in the day with the $1 million cash prize purse. And I saw a pro athlete who, in essence, they had stenciled his number with paint on his arm, and he looked really pro, and it looked great, looked dynamite, but they weren't making that available to all the age group athletes. And so I kind of went to bed that night, and I kind of said, "Hey, how can we bring this to all the age? Why should the pros just have these cool looking stenciled numbers?" And so that night I went to bed, and I thought I was inventing some sort of a stamping machine, which literally could be stamped on the arm and then stamped on the next athlete's arm and go from number 1 to number 2 to number 3. And that just, that was very problematic. And how are you going to do a stamping machine in the transition area before the race and all that good stuff? So it was the next weekend. One of my younger kids at the time came home from Sunday school with a butterfly tattoo on her cheek. And I said, "Bingo, temporary tattoos. Let's see if we can do that." And so I ordered a bunch of temporary tattoos and started playing with them. And you figure with a full-born iron event where you're sweating for 8+ hours, some of us maybe 14 to 16 hours out there on the course, you got to have some significant adhesive to withstand to the salt water, the sunscreen, the sweat, and the wind, and all that good stuff. So we played with the adhesives, and we started coming up with a better formula to stick on skin really well. And so that goes back to 2009. That's when we founded the company. My wife and I, we flew out to Colorado Springs and sold the idea to USAT, and they said, "Hey, let's put this into use to a few of our events." And so that was how we kind of kicked everything off. And then in 2010, we started saying, "Hey, instead of just having a race number, why not put a logo, whether it's a race logo or a race sponsor logo on top of our number?" And so that evolved over time, and there for a while our revenue was really being generated by sponsors buying the tattoos for the race director. And now we've kind of gone full circle. Now we try to target individual athletes to go to our website for Ironman events anyway, and to purchase what we call the TriTats packet directly to the athlete. So you can blame it on my brother, a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, well, I could blame a lot of things on my brother, but it's nothing good. Yeah. So, I mean, I personally like wearing them because it's kind of triathlons are more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. If you do your training, you're going to finish the race. I'd say it's probably 90% mental and 10% physical. The reason why I kind of like wearing them is I guess it makes me feel slightly more important. You just kind of have a better sense of yourself. Um, why do you think it's better than getting Sharpied?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we started the company, for me, it was almost like a vanity thing at first. It was like, hey, that pro has this cool looking number. I want that as an age grouper, and I want to look good and I want to look pro. So to be honest with you and the world, that's in my mind what triggered it for me. And today that's still true for some people that buy our product. They just want to look good, or for their A race that year or their 2 A races, they buy TriTats and they want to look good in those photos that show up. They're going to put them in their office or on their mantle place at home. And instead of having an ugly Sharpie, which is now bleeding down their arm because it didn't adhere, our race number tattoos simply look better. For some people, kind of like what you were just describing, it's really part of your race day uniform, and it helps you get into the mindset. Whether you wake up early that morning and you put them on yourself at home or in your hotel. Some people put them on the night before in their hotel and wake up already body marked. Some people might wait till transition area and just do it there next to their bike in the transition area, but it's really part of their race day uniform. So that's another, it just gets them in the mindset. To me, there's also a aspect. If you came out of T1 and you're on your bike and you're 20 miles into the bike course and something happens, whether you have a heart attack or a car mows you over on the bike course and you're in the ditch, that's another form of ID. It's another form of race ID to help tie you to that event. And they can easily look at your arm and say, gee, that's number 188. Who's number 188? Oh, that's Sean Jackson. Okay, who's his wife and who's his person that we should call for medical emergency contact information and that type of thing. Whereas if a Sharpie had washed off of my arm and you can't really identify myself, if I hadn't put on my race bib number yet, which typically we do in T2, so it's also a safety. It's kind of interesting now in this COVID environment that we're in, and once we start doing our mass participation events again, and they will happen, I'm actually thinking that maybe body marking as we triathletes traditionally knew it might actually go away. And from a safety aspect, with the need for social distancing, race directors might start requiring people to show up ahead of time with body marking done. And I don't know if you've ever taken a Sharpie and tried to body mark yourself on both arms, but it doesn't work that well.
I mean, it's not even that. It's when the sunscreen goes on and then it just smears. Especially
it gets all ugly. So with our race number tattoos, you can literally body mark yourself and it'll look pro, and you can do it again, like I said, the night before the event or early in the morning at home, or even in the transition area before you show up at the beach to start your swim. So those are my ideas as to why people want to do it. We actually had a photo crew at one time buy an entire season's worth. They were tracing a couple of the pro athletes around the world, and they simply wanted it for identification, so their camera equipment could see who that person was. And they had an algorithm somehow. There's some company in Israel that had formulated an algorithm where they could see the images on the arm, on the helmet sticker, or on the race bib number, and actually then quickly identify who that athlete was. And so there's also that, again, that goes to the race ID aspect, but it's actually kind of a technology play. How do we use this number image to identify a person?
Now, I was reading in some of the forums while I was doing my due diligence on this topic about how a lot of triathletes think that this was coming up with a solution to a problem that didn't exist. But if you wait long enough, a problem will come up, and that's what the coronavirus is doing.
Yeah, maybe that's what's actually happened, and maybe what you've read on some of those forums, whether it was Slow Twitch or whatever. I've actually got a funny story I'll share in a second about Dave Scott's father, but maybe in the early days I had solved a problem that didn't exist, and that kind of goes back to the whole vanity issue. But then again, for those people who are doing a triathlon that want to look pro or want to make our TriTats as part of their race day uniform, it's maybe helping them get into the psyche and get into the mindset of, hey, I'm competing now and I'm showing up and I'm towing the line. And if it helps that person, awesome. You know, or you come full circle back to the COVID-19 thing. You know, maybe this is just going to be mandatory, in the future. So back to your comment about solving a problem that maybe didn't exist. So Dave Scott has a father. His father's name is Vern, and Vern has been heavily involved in the sport of triathlon ever since Dave was so successful years ago. So it was about 2011. I met Vern at a triathlon industry conference, and he stops me and he's like, "Hey, you're that TriTats guy." I said, "Yep, guilty." He goes, "I don't like you very much." And I'm sitting there going, "Why does Vern Scott not like me? I don't know Vern Scott, and I think Vern Scott walks on water. How come you don't like me, buddy?" You know, and he cracked a grin and he goes, "You know, I used to volunteer in all these body marking areas, and I used to get my hands on all those cute young lady triathletes and put Sharpies on them, and now you're taking that opportunity away from me." You know, so that was the story from Vern, Dave Scott's father, and he and I had a good laugh about that story.
Very interesting. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, how it kind of started with race directors ordering your tattoos for their races. I mean, for one thing, what made them want to do that? I mean, I've done a handful of races. I think it was Beach to Battleship, basically any Team Magic race. I mean, what is their motivation behind doing that?
Yeah, so we kind of have two sides to our business model today. We kind of have what I call the wholesale side of the business, where we sell a large number of race numbers to a race director, or we have the retail side where we sell an individual number or an individual number packet called a pro pack to an individual athlete. And so what you're asking me about is how we really got started originally, and that's the wholesale side to the race director. A lot of race directors really want to roll out the red carpet for their athletes. And part of that is providing a very professional experience, whether you're a pro athlete or even to the age groupers. And they just really work hard on creating the best swag bag. And they work hard at creating the best race experience after the race with a band and a couple beer tickets or whatever. And I call that kind of rolling out the red carpet. Well, those same race directors with that same mindset want to provide their athletes with a good looking professional body marking method. And our company, TriTats, helps to solve that. So in the early days, it started that way. Well, then that quickly progressed to, I can sell a sponsorship logo above this race number. So if I can get the local bank or the local car dealership, or I can get Budweiser beer to purchase these race numbers for me and also pay me, the race director, for a sponsorship, why not? So it was a way to monetize their race. You know, in addition to having the finish line banner, you could also provide a sponsor logo. You know, so those are really the two motivators that I see it for a race director. The third motivator might again be that whole safety issue. You know, whether something happens in the swim and you need to quickly identify a person who's gone unconscious in the water, or you can see their race on their arm and identify who they are.
Yeah. So Iron Man is not one of those people who wants to roll out a red carpet for me. In fact, I feel like they just keep raising prices and giving me less swag. Is there a particular reason why they don't want any part of that?
You know, here in America, yeah, I'll say in the United States, here in the United States, Ironman traditionally has not provided race number tattoos in any of their packets for their athletes. I think it's because of financial considerations. Ironman is owned by a private equity company, and it's all about the money at the end of the day. You know, so there for a few years, we had a really good sponsorship arrangement with Ironman where they promoted us and we promoted some aspects of their events. And they would help drive individual athletes to go to our website to purchase our race number tattoos. We no longer have that relationship. It kind of ran its course and things like that from a financial standpoint. But for them, I think it's really about the money. Now the fun is at the 2 world championship races that Ironman does, whether it's 70.3 or at Kona, Hawaii, they do purchase race numbers from us for all of the athletes. So if you're going to race at Kona in October of 2020, you will have your race numbers, and they will be by TriTats. Same for 70.3. In some of the races in Europe, some of the race directors do purchase TriTats for those events at Ironman, but not all. So I think it's really a financial thing, and I think it's due to the ownership structure of Ironman.
Now, is there any reason why, non-Ironman races have a different size number? I noticed they're always smaller when I got them.
Oh, you mean the size of the
actual number? It seems like a little bit smaller than, it's got to be like 3 inches tall, the ones that I get for Ironman.
Those are 2 inches tall, by the way. They're not 3 inches. And remind me, I have a funny story to tell you about the white outline on some of the events that we do. I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, so some races just want of different sizes. There's no real, I tried to work with USA Triathlon to set a marking, recommended deal, and they never really adopted that. But in working with the photo companies, we came to realize that a 2-inch race number shows up really well. If it's a little bit smaller than that, it doesn't really work. If it's much larger than that, if you have a 4-digit number on your arm and each number is 3 inches tall, there's a lot of ladies out there, their arm just simply isn't large enough. So, really the magic number that works best for most, 2-inch, a number that's 2 inches high.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, now that I wear sleeved tri-kits, I have them running down basically my forearm until it reaches my watch. So I got to kind of squeeze it a little bit. So I can understand why women would have that problem.
Or you can even cheat and overlap the numbers by a couple millimeters, and that might, help you with that area along there.
Mm-hmm.
I also recommend for the men with hairy arms, just take a razor blade that morning and just shave a kind of 1.5 inch strip on your arm, and they'll adhere a lot better.
Yeah, I can see that. So I read in a thread from a beginner triathlete, they didn't know how to get them off, so they used WD-40. Do you recommend that?
There are 1,000 ways to take your TriTats off, but my whole question is this: why would you ever want to take it off? You should just wear it for the next week or two. Wear it as a badge of honor, wear it to the office, wear it on the airplane, and just show everyone, hey, I did a triathlon. But again, not everyone is as vain as I am, and they might want to take them off after the event. So yeah, WD-40 works. A lot of the ladies travel with nail polish remover, and you can take some nail polish remover, put it on a cotton swab and rub it off, and that works really well. You can also take, not duct tape doesn't work that well, but packing tape, and just take a strip of packing tape, stick it on your arm, let it sit on there for a couple seconds and tear it off. And I would say about 80 to 90% of the residual black of the number will peel off with that packing tape. That's another way to do it. But yeah, we've had all kinds of strange things written on blogs on how to take it off. One guy was making a joke about using diesel fuel, and I don't recommend doing that.
Yeah, that seems kind of harsh.
Yeah,
exactly. I can't stand the smell of diesel fuel.
No, exactly.
So coronavirus, I'm pretty sure that we won't race until 2021. Matter of fact,
I hope you're wrong. I hope there's some races that we pull off later this year, but I'm prepared for you to be exactly right, Eric. That might be the case.
Yeah, and I mean, I just had one race canceled last week, and I had another email that came just before our chat saying my third race in June was going to be canceled. I happened to schedule 17 races this year just to keep myself occupied. It's like, all right, well, now I'm down 6 races. And I mean, I think that uh, the fact that pretty much all sporting events are going to suffer because of the close proximity of spectators and athletes. Um, Financially, this year is not going to be a good year for you, but you think, you know, down the line, it's, the following year is going to be a great year for you. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, our sales are down in the dumps right now. It's terrible. Ever since COVID hit and races started getting canceled, I mean, we are literally, you know, 10% of what we were at this stage in the game last year. It's absolutely terrible for us. And as you can imagine, it's literally because events aren't happening. And the smart race directors called us early and said, "Sorry, cancel our order, please. Don't charge us. Don't invoice us." And so we were able to cancel, most of those orders, going back to late. I think our first phone call for that reason came kind of March 15th or so, right around there. Yeah, so this is a very tough year for us. I'm just being blatantly honest. But next year, who knows? We might have an upswing in sales, is what I'm hoping. I hate to make additional revenue off of a bad thing that happened to this world, meaning COVID-19. But it might help our business next year as we recover. And who knows? We might see an uptick in sales because more race directors are ordering more race number tattoos from us simply because they want to see body marking done in a different way.
Right.
Proof will be in the
Lastly,
pudding. We'll see what
huh?
happens next year. I said proof will be in the pudding. We'll just have to see what pans out next year.
Yeah, I mean, because there's also the unknown of what is the recession going to do to the economy. Are they going to say that, even though this is a better option health wise, is it good? It's kind of, because it's a lot of people see it as a vanity expense. It's kind of a luxury thing. One of those things that they might decide to go with or without. But if race directors are already providing for them, that solves one problem.
Yeah. Yeah. If the race directors go ahead and solve it, that's great. If the race directors don't, we do provide that option of having a pro pack. And a pro pack sells on our website. It's a retail sale of $35. What's included in that pro pack are 200 race number tattoos. So there's 20 of each number. There's 20 zeros and 21s and 22s and so on. And that will last the average triathlete about 5 to 7 events. It just depends what race numbers they're assigned. And so that's a good way for an athlete who's worried about COVID-19 or who just wants to be identified easily to take care of all of their body marking needs for several events.
Okay. I think I had one more question for you. And it was just one of those things that I thought of and I didn't really know. Um, TriTats are really not that big and they're very thin. What kind of storage place? Where do you store all these numbers at? Usually
we,
they pick it up.
yeah, you mean for us in our warehouse? That's your question?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need
Or
a warehouse the size of a football field. What kind of space is involved, to keep all this stuff?
it's kind of funny. Back in when I started the company in 2009, we literally printed static image tattoos of every number between the number 1 and the number 5,000. And we had to warehouse and we printed 1,000 of each one of those numbers. And back in the day, some of you people that have been with us a long time might remember that you received a little Ziploc bag, and in that Ziploc bag were your 2 or 3 numbers, one for the left arm, one for the right arm, and one for your leg. And that number literally was a static image. Well, today, we are fortunate enough with digital print technology, and this is one of the things that I had to learn so much about early on. And we actually won an award in what year was that? 2012, 2013, for how we were using digital print in the numbering world. And it was an interesting thing that Hewlett Packard is the name of a printing company. They make printers. and they saw what we were doing with their equipment, and they gave us this cool award. But anyway, today we have to warehouse so much less because we can digitally print for one event. So if you have an event with 1,324 athletes, we can literally do a print run from number 1 to 100, 324 and stop right there. And we can give you 2 sets of those numbers, you the race director, and you give them out to your athletes. But back in the day, we literally had to hunt number by number by number, put them in the Ziploc bags, kit those up, and ship them off to the race director. So today our storage requirements are a lot less than what they to be. And I thought your storage question was kind of going to the individual athlete who owns a Pro Pack. In essence, those tattoos will last. If you keep them dry, don't leave them out in the sun on the dash of your car, and don't get them moist in a humid environment, they'll last about 3 years.
It's always humid.
Yeah, so some parts of the country, they might only last a year. But if you can keep them dry, you keep them in air conditioning, they will last about 3 years before it dries up and simply won't transfer from that tattoo paper to your skin.
Okay. Now, when we talked earlier this week, you said you wanted to ask me a few things. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, number one, how many races were you registered for this year? I think you just said something.
I think it was either 16 or 17. I was averaging, let's see, starting in April, I was averaging about 2 a month through December. I was going to finish up with Challenge Daytona.
Oh, gosh. Okay, cool.
Maybe that race actually happens. We don't know. It just depends if this gets under control or not.
Yeah. Okay, and then, so assuming that your 2020 season goes to pot, what 1 or 2 races will you miss the most by not being able to do them this year?
Memphis is 70.3 is a new race. I kind of like new races. You have like 2 types of people in triathlons, where there's the person that's content with doing the same race over and over again for whatever reason. It's close or they like it. I like new experiences. I like going everywhere, and I have a magnetic mapping in the United States, and I put down pins wherever I race, and I like getting more pins. And to be fair, like 2 times at a race, like, once just to do it, and maybe a second time to try to PR there. Other than that, I like to rotate in new races. Like the original plan for 2021 was going to be, I have a lot of Sky Miles on different airlines and hotel rewards I acquired at my last job, and I was good. I mean, I could pretty much fly and stay for free for a few years. So I was going to do a 70.3 every month, starting with like Puerto Rico, ending with Daytona or what's the other one? Indian Wells.
Oh, wow.
And go all around the country and do them, because I was going to write a book about 50 triathlons in 50 states. And I've dug up some really interesting races too. Like there's a half Ironman above the Arctic Circle. It's in July, so I mean that's a plus. But the water is still apparently freezing cold. But
what's the name of that event that you're referring to north of the Arctic Circle?
It's called Sourdough. It's a half Ironman.
Okay, sourdough. Okay.
Yeah, they limit the field to 99 entries, but to be fair, most of their entries come from Alaska. They don't have a lot of people that come up there from the states, from the continuous states. But I planned on going to all these different races, and right now it's my 2020 season is going to be my 2021 season. I've only had 1 race get outright refunded, but the rest of them got deferred to the following year. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to miss it this year, but I'm going to catch it again next year.
Yeah. So I like how you said that. So what you're thinking in your mind is your 2021 season is going to look a lot like what your 2020 should have looked like.
Well, they're deferring the race, so I mean, I already paid for the entry. It's not like I'm going to schedule something else instead, lose the money. It's like, all right, well, I'll just do that race then.
Sure. So you heard me talk about kind of the future of body marking post COVID-19. What do you think it's going to look like? I know you're not a race director, but you're a triathlete that has done a ton of races. What does your crystal ball tell you it's going to look like?
Actually talked to a lot of race directors lately. Uh, you've run into a lot of problems with social distancing, and a lot of it goes to um, like I personally thought we could only really be able to race once there's a vaccine. But if we're going to try in the meantime, it's just there are so many factors that go into a race that where you're in close proximity to another person to where you're standing in line and I'm breathing down your neck waiting to get in the water on a time trial start.
Hmm.
It's like, well, body marking, it's one of those things where you're actually touching someone else. And, you know, unless you're coming up there with, somebody to be a race support or a friend, you're not going to be able to sharpen yourself. I mean, even with a mirror, I'll still do it backwards. Or, I mean, I'm not left-handed, it's going to look like I have Parkinson's when I do this arm. And it's, the TriTats are going to be a lot more convenient. Um, and as long as, it's really not that difficult to put them on. It doesn't take that long. But I think they could become the norm. Um, and I honestly think whatever changes become of the coronavirus are going to be permanent changes. Like I don't think they'll be reverting back to what they were, last year. I think they're just going to be around to stay. Maybe there's no body marking. Maybe they find races where they have larger parking lots to accompany for more bike racks because you got to distance people. Maybe swim starts are going to be completely different. You might see the end of the mass start, and then you see more of the time trial start. But that I just think of how Chattanooga is. That time trial start, you're lining too wide, going back for about a half a mile. It's like, well, if I got to space these people even farther apart, this is going to go for a really long way. Uh, it's going to change the landscape. And, body marking is one of those things where you're actually touching someone else. I don't think there's really that experience in any other area of triathlon other than like if you're doing an Ironman, they'll rub you with sunscreen, but even then they're wearing gloves.
Hmm.
But and then with it's going to change with your volunteers too, actually on the course at the aid stations. So I'm pretty sure body marking is going to be one of those permanent changes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you said. Some of the changes that take place might be permanent changes. One of the things, outside of triathlon, in the world of business and just between friends, people shake hands. In Europe, you tend to greet people with a kiss on one cheek. Are those human traditions going away now? I don't know. I hope not. But if you want to take it from what you just said to kind of the whole human state of things, it's kind of interesting to think about.
I mean, yeah, you don't know when the last time that person was when they washed their hands.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Exactly. Okay, well, this has been fun. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you for being an ambassador to TriTats. It's been great. This year we have 50 ambassadors out there, and it's been a quiet year for all of them, but we tried to create some incentives for the ambassadors to encourage the sale of pro packs. And that's been going slow, quite frankly, because there's no races going on. But hopefully that'll all pick up here in June and July.
yeah, I mean, I would really like to be able to start racing again in July. I just know uh, with some of the decisions being made, that looks like it's going to be more of a tall order
Yeah.
to happen. And, maybe if this gets, quelled, maybe that October race in Memphis happens. Maybe we get lucky and we have those late season Ironmans that happen. So, there'll actually be code up qualifications for the following year. because the season's so backloaded. You don't want to lose those, and we want to see Coda, even though it's going to be a diluted Coda this year.
Yeah, it'll be a different Kona this year. Yeah, I like that word diluted. It'll be quite different.
Well, I mean, the Ironman's 70.3 World Championship is already going to be diluted because the PTO and Challenge Daytona threw down the gauntlet. And I live in Atlanta. It's a 17-hour flight to New Zealand, but it's a 5-hour drive to Daytona.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was a pro, I would definitely go to the place with more money that I didn't have to fly across the country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and will travel be open, for everyone to get to New Zealand? That might not, you might be able to get to Florida, but you can't get to New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand might have their, they're actually pretty strict on their quarantine and COVID-19 rules that they put in place. They're a lot more strict than they are in the United States. So they
Yeah,
might even let us in.
I hear
Well,
you.
John, it's been a great time. I appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully representing you guys. That will be fun.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.